SelfEsteem. And as Nessa said, I'm joining from Australia, in South Australia in Adelaide, and I'm from the Computer Science Education Research Group, and I'll be presenting this paper today on behalf of my colleagues, who some of them are joining us in this session online today, which is fantastic. As we've heard, significant efforts are being undertaken to determine best ways to build teacher capacity in teaching computer science, with a recognised need to support teachers with varying degrees of background skills, knowledge, confidence and perceptions, as well as identities. In this study, we really wanted to explore teacher self-esteem in computer science according to various factors to determine if we can identify particular pinpoints to guide future professional learning and research. So this study uses data from the Measuring Teacher Enacted Computing Curriculum, the metric instrument, and the data set is available on the csedresearch.org website, and this was data generated for a 2019 IDSE working group that I was involved with my colleagues. And the survey features different components that can be used addressing demographics, professional development opportunities, classroom practices and resources that teachers are using. And anyone is welcome to take that survey instrument and use it in their own context. And this paper presents an analysis of the available data around the component of the survey addressing teacher self-esteem in computer science. And the instrument has been designed with evidence of validity and reliability to measure several facets, and these are outlined in the working group report. And this also includes the self-esteem scale, which we're using today in this study, and we've outlined some other validity and reliability factors in there. So on this slide are my wonderful co-authors from Australia, England, Ireland, Italy, Malta, Scotland, and the United States. And I'd like to do a shout out to Keith for his work on analysing the data set, and Monica for her testing of the instrument as well and input into the writing of the paper. And we worked together on a further study following our working group. We were quite interested in exploring teacher factors in more depth, and we were keen to understand teacher self-esteem. So we wanted to know, what are the differences in K12 teachers' computer science self-esteem compared across countries, year groups taught, experience teaching computer science, gender and age. The term self-esteem has been used interchangeably with other constructs such as self-efficacy, and there are variations in the way that researchers describe these constructs. So in this paper, we'd like to highlight that self-esteem is more broadly concerned with a person's positive and negative attitudes or perceptions about their self. So it's really the emotional response that people experience as they evaluate themselves. It's their beliefs and judgments about skills, abilities, and those similar factors, and the extent to which the individual believes themselves to be capable, significant, successful, and worthy. Self-efficacy, on the other hand, is much more task-specific, although very similar, and is concerned with a person's belief in their own capabilities to execute particular tasks. So to demonstrate these construct differences, we present a similar statement in different ways on this slide. The first being around self-esteem that is at a global level. So I feel that I have a number of good qualities. The second is domain-specific self-esteem. So I feel I have a number of good Java programming qualities. And the last is self-efficacy. So focusing on that task, I can write syntactically correct programming statements. Low self-esteem has been aligned with a person's feeling of rejection in themselves, dissatisfaction, and low self-worth. And individuals with high self-esteem have been found to be more effective, active, and assertive in meeting different environmental demands. Programming self-esteem has been found to be a predictor of programming performance, and differences have been found among CS1 students where their self-esteem has been different according to variables like age and gender. Computing pre-service teachers have been found to have higher self-efficacy around inquiry and problem-solving skills than they are in programming. And for teachers, the combination of successful past experience, verbal support from principals, students, peers and parents, and opportunities for observation of successful peers can build their sense of self-efficacy for teaching. So there's not a lot of research out there that we could find, and so we really wanted to explore this aspect of self-esteem in more detail. So we'll take a look at the methods. So as I mentioned, we're using the self-esteem scale from the metric survey, and this was based on the Bergen self-esteem instrument. So the 10 items used in the Bergen study were added to the metric instrument. However, for that purpose, we were looking, rather than on programming, we changed it to computer science as the domain to address the broader K12 computer science curriculum. That was the focus of that study. And for evidence of reliability and validity, the Cronbach's alpha indicates good reliability. And that's an instrument that's been based on Rosenberg's previous instruments, which is widely used in social sciences research. So teachers were asked to respond to statements on a 7-point Likert scale. We have the statements here on the screen, and it's from 1, strongly disagree, to 7, strongly agree. And just to note that this is their self-esteem in computer science personally, so not their ability to teach computer science, and we were clear in the description of that. And teachers were also encouraged to reflect on it, whether their local context referred to computational thinking. We sort of outlined that language a little bit earlier. So looking at the data set, we had 219 responses to work with. It was a small sample. We just wanted to sort of explore it and model the way we might do this for a broader study. 61% were female, almost half were teaching for 12 or more years, almost 30% are from remote or rural areas. So participants could tell us which year levels they were teaching in, and so we put them into either primary or secondary. The majority of respondents were found to be teaching across middle to secondary years, with some working with the early to primary years. So we'll just have a look at some of the results. Here we have the collective average of teachers' reported agreement against the self-esteem statements. And the first set of statements in the red box are those that relate to negative perceptions, such as I certainly feel useless at CS at times. And the second green box includes positive statements, such as I feel I have a number of good CS qualities. And we see that overall teachers had a higher level of agreement towards positive statements than they did for negative statements. Now we're going to have a look further into CS self-esteem according to our variables. I should note that the PCA algorithm produced a single value with a high self-esteem as a negative value, while a teacher with low self-esteem was reported as a positive value. But in the graphs on the screen here, we've flipped the axis so that you can see the positive self-esteem above and the negative below. So looking at teacher age, in terms of other studies, we've read that CS1 students had previously shown that age was a factor when predicting success in programming. So we thought this could be interesting. We didn't find any significant differences between group means using a one-way ANOVA and Turkey HSD post-hoc test, but we do notice that there are reported differences overall, with some teachers at either end of the scale reporting higher self-esteem. So apparently mastering CS at the industry level takes around 10,000 hours or full-time working years. And so we were curious, does teaching experience in CS impact on self-esteem? So unsurprisingly, teachers with no CS teaching experience have significantly lower self-esteem in CS than other groups. Although it wasn't significant, we did notice that perhaps teachers start to build their self-esteem after 4 years, but it's worth further exploration around that. With a Welsh t-test we found that males reported significantly higher self-esteem than female teachers, and future research could explore the accuracy around this, or looking at different performance measures and different reasons why that might be the case. So looking at teaching age groups, we found that primary teachers reported significantly lower self-esteem than secondary teachers, and we know that for many teachers in primary years this is a brand new subject. Future studies could look at comparing different CS knowledge required for those year levels and determining the depth of content required, as well as their prior exposure, qualifications, and many other factors that might influence those differences. So a Turkey post-hoc test was performed, and we found no significant differences between any country groups, but we did notice there were some differences between England, Italy and Scotland who showed a positive CS self-esteem, but further work is required to unpack this finding to determine if there's local factors that influence this, such as curriculum, professional learning opportunities and qualifications, as well as to include other countries. No significant differences were found between local location groups, but we did notice slightly differences between teachers who were living further out the city. They were reporting lower levels of self-esteem. So just wrapping up with the conclusions, we found that females, primary teachers and those with no CS teaching experience reported significantly lower self-esteem than counterparts. Although not significant, teachers living further from a city centre and those aged between 30 to 49 reported lower self-esteem. Previous work looking at challenges faced by CS teachers found that teachers initially struggle with teaching computer science because of their limited content knowledge. And so measuring content knowledge and self-esteem or self-efficacy would be worthwhile. And although there are many other additional factors such as pedagogical knowledge, technological knowledge and experience as well that are worth exploring. So this study really raises more questions and an opportunity to dive deeper. We're keen to look at what interventions or professional development can improve teacher self-esteem, and particularly for those with significantly lower self-esteem, perhaps the groups that we've identified. And we want to know how long does it take teachers to build their self-esteem and what impact does low teacher self-esteem have on students learning computer science as well. So we acknowledge that the limitations. This is a pilot study reflecting a small sample across some selected countries, and its intention is to scale up this. We're looking at qualitative data that could support a better understanding of teacher self-esteem and their needs. And we do acknowledge that the terminology in this paper, so referencing CS, may have impacted on those responses. And there's a need to further understand those factors that influence high and low teacher CS self-esteem and the impact that that has on students. So I'd love to hear your questions and catch up with you as well in the coffee session to discuss this topic.